Hey gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Good afternoon. It's freezing cold in Nova Scotia. The snow finally stopped, but it's not great. We've got a lot of great content here to watch. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Smash the like, hit subscribe. Let's get right into this. We have a lot of content to watch before we cross over to question period, which will be very shortly. So let's kick this off. In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups. The globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
Madam Speaker, it's good to be back in this place after some time away at home in the community. Time made longer by, I think, a government that took an extended break from doing what Canadians expected, which is what we're here to talk about. And I do wish you a Happy New Year, Madam Speaker, but I can't say the same for all Canadians who I think over the past number of weeks have watched what's becoming known as a reckless world tour unfold, one without a clear worldview at a moment where our relationship with the U.S. is uncertain and fragile, if I'm being polite. And at a time when Canadians are looking for reassurance about their jobs, about their future, about the country's resilience, they are instead giving confusion and mixed signals and growing insecurity, and most of all, a growing distance between words and outcomes. So we come here to this House to hold the government accountable and advocate for better policies and serve Canadians in a fight for a country that we all love. And it comes as no newsflash to anybody that this country is under threat. Our sovereignty is being menaced, not just by somebody south of the border, but also by a range of hostile actions and nations from all across the world. And we'd like to think that our government would stand up to these threats and make our nation safe and secure. In fact, that is the first job of any government. But what if the record of the Liberals over the last decade stands in direct contradiction to doing just that? 10 years of choices have steadily eroded Canada's strength and independence, leaving our country less self-reliant and more exposed over a full spectrum of national capacity. That's military, it's political, it's economic, it's diplomatic. And in moments of global uncertainty, leadership isn't measured by the words spoken abroad, but it's about the resilience that we build here at home. And I can stand here and exhaust my time, far more than that, cataloging this government's failures, from allowing foreign interference to take root in Canada, to leaving our citizens exposed to intimidation by terrorist-led organizations, or keeping critical minerals in the ground beneath our feet, which the world urgently needs to get to other markets. But Canadians don't need another inventory of failure. We've been there. They live with those consequences every single day, and they're seeing them right now more than ever. And it is the same Liberal members that created these things, the very people that insisted that they were good for Canada, doubled down time and time and again and called others names for just merely raising the concern over the last decade of what Canada didn't do. They're now insisting that they're the ones to fix it. But here's their big idea on an action plan to fix these problems. It's another speech, it's another press conference, it's another committee study, a report back after long after it got more out of control, another Band-Aid, perhaps another project office. Whatever it is, tends to be just words. And I see members today patting themselves here on the back about a speech the Prime Minister gave in Davos last week. And as somebody who's written many, many speeches, I give him credit where credit is due. But here's where we diverge on opinion. And this was before the public and private climb downs that we're now hearing about. They view the speech as an announcement or a proclamation, and they view that as the solution. And these things aren't actually solutions. They are stepping stones. They are meant to communicate an idea, but it is not the actual action. But one grand speech from the Prime Minister can't erase a 10-year legacy that has left our country's voice diminished and nearly meaningless in the face of global threats that we're facing today. And the platitudes from the pundits and the chattering classes will not put food on people's tables, they will not build pipelines, they will not create jobs, or they will not leave us an ounce more independent than we were previously. And yes, saying the right words means nothing when you won't do the right things to match them. Or at least that was the talk then. You see, I agree with the Prime Minister when he says that Canada should rely more on itself, reduce its vulnerabilities, work with its partners who share our interests. These things are things that I think everybody in this House agrees on. And it's things that Conservatives have been saying for over a decade. In fact, they're the things that we've been talking about doing for nearly a year now since he became Prime Minister. He wants to, quote, build, baby, build. He wants to, quote, invest more and spend less. He wants to make our, quote, country, quote, an energy superpower, or like whatever the latest tagline is. We agree in theory with those things. And since those words were spoken first, there's nothing of substance that has followed. They remain carefully crafted, slogans designed for a speech rather than a plan, and there's no clear path forward. There's no timetable, and there's no meaningful detail outlining what the Prime Minister intends to do, or when he intends to do it. And I know that I'll hear more as I split my time with the member from Nanaimo. And what's worse is our deficit has gone up, not down. We haven't built a single mile of new pipeline or even cleared the path for it. The biggest achievement right now is an office that has added more bureaucrats. In fact, 96% of what that office has spent has been $1 million on hiring bureaucrats, and not a single new project is even close to an approvals process. So here's where we're challenging the Prime Minister to do. We want him to put his money where his mouth is. And we said that we would help him do that. We want him to make this country better. So let's stop talking about it and start doing it. There's a piece of legislation, there's a plan right here in front of us in this House of Commons to consider. It's the Conservatives' Canadian Sovereignty Act. It's a blueprint for an action plan that the Prime Minister seems to be missing. And there's 3 main points in it. First, it would restore Canada's standing as a competitive, resource-producing nation by dismantling the laws that actively impede the development. The same laws that we helped him give himself the power to override when we helped him pass C5. He has extraordinary powers now, and there are still things in the way, and we're offering him that same goodwill in this House to speed this up. Measures like C69 have layered excessive paperwork and duplication onto the approvals process, and he knows that. He's slowing projects without delivering a public benefit. That's exactly what that bill does. Repealing the industrial carbon tax, the emissions cap, the EV mandate, and the plastic bans would remove the unnecessary burdens that our industry has to compete on the global market with, and who can't. And the Prime Minister knows that as well. That's why he gave himself excessive powers to clear the path for resource projects. So I invite him to give him excessive powers where we could repeal all of this, and we would help him do it today. Second, a truly competitive economy has to reward those who commit their labor and their capital in this country. In Canada's success, the Canadian Sovereignty Act would do exactly that by introducing a reinvestment tax credit, which eliminates the capital gains on profits invested in the Canadian economy. This would encourage domestic investment, strengthen productivity, and keep capital working here at home. And third, the Act would finally remove the long-standing internal trade barriers, which he stood at a microphone and said were gone. This costs our country $200 million a year, and they are still very much there. Just because you say they're not there at a microphone doesn't mean they're not there. And finally, the Act would safeguard Canadian innovation and intellectual property from being appropriated by foreign competitors, particularly those with the economic and security interests that don't align with ours, and we saw plenty of that in the last week. We can do this all right now and support sovereignty. And everything in this bill translates to more jobs, more prosperities, and by virtue, a better economy and more money in the pocket of every single Canadian. And what's more is that these are the things that the Prime Minister in the past said that he wanted to do. So it is our job to help him do exactly that. And if he would adopt this plan, I think we would get to moving a lot quicker. We would have shovels in the ground. We would have more money in the pockets of Canadians. It isn't that complicated. When you say that you're going to do something from a podium or in a speech, you should work to act on that.
You had said in your opening remarks that this bill would not provide for the withholding of services to individuals. In an answer to my colleague, Mr. Lloyd, you said that.
We're back to some committee that I don't think some people would have seen. This is Melanie Joly being questioned. A couple of rounds here that, again, I don't think many people saw them.
Even though the word any individual is in the bill, going back to the definitions in the Telecommunications Act, an individual person wouldn't be included. I have with me here the definition section of the Telecommunications Act. It says it defines person as includes any individual. So are you here undertaking to change that definition so that it does not include any individual?
I'm willing to make sure that there's even a section if you bring in an amendment, and we could definitely work with it to make sure that it is clear that this will not have any impact on freedom of speech online or anything linked to people's the type of content that could be put online.
But would you remove the definition?
And so basically making sure that, and that was a bit my answer to my colleague from the Bloc, our colleague from the Bloc Québécois, is I want to make sure that we're talking only about the critical infrastructure, that it doesn't go into basically the connectivity part of ultimately what are we talking, how are we addressing how people are basically discussing on the internet. And I think that's really important because I think it's not the role of the Minister of Industry. This is not how the government is organized. I think it's under the Minister of the Department of Heritage that question should be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Because the bill as it's written right now says that you would have oversight to withhold services to any individual if any threat to the telecommunication system arises, and that it doesn't say any physical threat, any structural threat. It says any threat. And what particularly concerns me about that is that there are several internal Government of Canada documents describing misinformation and disinformation as threats to the telecommunication systems of Canada. So I put it to you, do you and your government believe that misinformation and disinformation are threats to the integrity of the telecommunication system in Canada?
But this is not about misinformation, disinformation, and that is a question that should be asked much more in the context of anything linked to online Harms Act or everything that would be much more about content. At industry, we're not addressing these questions. It has nothing to do with
Well, I hope not, but the bill is before us as any threat. So are you hereby undertaking to change that language to be any physical or structural threat?
The bill is clear in terms of this is about critical infrastructure and the threats that could be done to basically the telecommunication networks, the wires, the towers, etc. It has nothing to do on what is being discussed online. And I think the last Parliament saw that clearly, and I think this should be clear here as well.
I think it should be clear.
I understand that if it's not clear enough, we can make sure that there's amendment regarding that.
Okay, fantastic. So in the previous Parliament, when this bill existed as Bill C-26, it was thoroughly criticized by the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, the Canadian Constitution Foundation, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. I've discussed the bill with the directors of many of those organizations. None of the criticism that they made turned into amendments when that bill was passed by the Parliament. And none of the conservative amendments, as far as I can tell in the archaeology of this bill, were passed at the last committee. So it sounds like you're now expressing an openness to amendments, but none of that occurred when amendments were sought for Bill C-26 in the previous Parliament. Why the change?
Well, listen, I have Doug Shipley, the member for Barrie Springwater, Arome Dante, that said, Madam Speaker, I'm proud to rise in this House today to speak to this important legislation on behalf of the good people in my riding. I'm pleased to see Bill C-26 come forward in the House for improving the resiliency of our critical infrastructure is the utmost importance to our national security and the everyday safety of Canadians. That's what your colleague mentioned. There's another
Thank you.
one.
I've never met that colleague. I'm interested in your opinions.
Bill C-26 is a bill that addresses an important and growing topic. Cybersecurity is very important, very timely. I'm glad that in calling this bill today, the government sees this as a priority. And that was a member from Calgary Rocky Ridge. Alberta.
I'm sorry, that has no bearing on my concern or the concerns of my constituents.
Madame la ministre, on va passer la parole au député Strauss.
Madam Minister, Strauss has the floor.
Except that the powers in this bill potentially touch on the fundamental freedoms protected in Section 2 of our Charter, the freedoms to expression. If an individual were to find themselves not receiving services from an ISP.
And we have 20 seconds left.
We have a Charter of Rights and Freedom, and every single legislation must abide by it. It's a constitutional responsibility. And
do you regret violating
sure
Section 2 in the Invocation of the Emergencies Act as the Federal Court of
MP
Appeals?
Strauss, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's all the time we have. So let me turn to MP Lavoie. Monsieur Lavoie, 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, monsieur.
All right, gang, we're going to cross over to something else right now because these other pieces I did show, that piece I didn't show yet. So now we've got that out of the way.
And I would suggest that the government takes the...
We're crossing over to a different committee. We've got, I believe it's Jacob Mantle facing off with Minister of Trade, Mahinder Sidhu. Let's check it out.
This matter seriously. It should provide parliamentarians with appropriate notice to prepare to consider your remarks and the remarks of officials, not 2 hours and 10 minutes in the morning on the second day back from our constituency break. You talked about trade delivering, preserving access, but by all accounts, Minister, the deal we are getting is worse than the deal we had. The trade continuity agreement, which we previously had, in large part based on the provisions of the Canada-EU trade agreement, the CETA, as you know, and until very recently, the stated objective of your government was to negotiate a standalone Canada-UK trade agreement to preserve those mutual benefits that we had under the CETA. But what you've brought before us is a worse deal. The TPP has comparatively higher tariff rates and slower tariff elimination. The TPP has less service and investment liberalization and more shallow regulatory cooperation. The TPP has less access for our agricultural products, has no dedicated provisions for veterinary, sanitary, and phytosanitary protocols, has less breadth and depth of access for local government procurement opportunities, has weaker pharmaceutical protections, and you said workers are top of your mind, while TPP has weaker labor protections than our previous deal. So simply holding on to what we had, which was your stated objective until recently, would have been a better deal. So my question to you is, how did you miss this opportunity to engage and redefine our trading relationship with the United Kingdom?
Madam Chair, through you, I'd like to thank the member for that important question. When we're talking about the CPTPP and what the quality of this agreement is, it's a trading bloc of roughly a dozen countries that represent 15% of the global economy. And if you look at since when the Government of Canada signed the CPTPP trade agreement since 2018, trade numbers have gone up and they've actually opened up more access for many industries. And I'll just give you some quick examples, Mr. Mantle. Malaysia has 25% growth since we signed into the CPTPP. If you look at the numbers in Japan, from $29 billion to $48 billion in 2023 alone, a 60% increase in two-way trade. And Vietnam, another important trading partner, an increase of roughly 110% growth. And so this is about creating opportunities. This is about opening doors for workers. And there's a reason why countries are lining up to join the CPTPP because of the high-quality standards. And coming back to the UK, why is the UK important? It's our third largest trading partner, and we need to continue opening doors. Right now, currently with what we have right now with the UK, we have 99% tariff-free access. Of course, we're working hard to get to that 100% mark. I'm fighting hard for that 1%. But the CPTPP presents us an opportunity to have mechanisms in place, to have those conversations to get to full 100%. And so I think it's important to note, look at the numbers, look at the facts. You look at the countries lining up to join the CPTPP. We need to be there to support countries like our counterparts in the UK to join this important trade agreement.
Thank you, Minister. I mean, Vietnam and Indonesia have nothing to do with our access for the United Kingdom. So while I may agree with those positions, you've not answered my question. And in fact, you've not disagreed with any of the points I made that the deal that we are entering into is worse than the deal that we had. I have another question for you. It's on a different matter. It's on your recent trip overseas to China. This week is the anniversary. Tomorrow will be the one-year anniversary of the final report of the public inquiry into foreign interference, which identified China as our top foreign interference threat. In fact, in the election, of course, you'll remember it's been widely reported the Prime Minister considered China to be our greatest security threat. And just 8 months later, we are now entering into what you are calling a strategic partnership. Now, trade with China is necessary. A positive diplomatic relationship with China is necessary. But forging a new strategic partnership with China is a choice. Declaring that we are setting ourselves up for a new Chinese-led New World Order is a choice. Doing those things with great fanfare and media attention is a choice. So what I would suggest to you is that attempting to trade American unpredictability for Chinese dependence is not the answer to our problems. And I think Canadians are owed an explanation as to why, in such a short period, your government has moved from a position of considering China our greatest security threat to forging new strategic partnerships with a geopolitical adversary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'd like to respond to the member in regarding his important question in terms of the U.S. and, of course, China. The U.S. will always be an important partner to Canada in terms of trade and other relationships. When you look at China, our second largest trading partner, it's important to engage at a time when our economic security is being threatened. The Joint Economic Trade Commission didn't sit for 8 years to work through many of the trade irritants that the canola growers have asked us to resolve, that the seafood industry has asked us to resolve, that the beef industry has come to us and say, please help us resolve these issues. And so this comes back to a conversation I had when I was newly appointed back in May in Paris with my counterpart from China, Minister Wang, to work towards reassessing and opening the JETSI, which is the Joint Economic Trade Commission, so we can work through many of these trade irritants. And so the trip to China was about resolving many of these irritants and get access to many of these industries. The canola industry alone supports 250,000 jobs. The beef industry is 350,000 jobs. You look at the seafood sector in Atlantic Canada, in West Coast, it's about 30,000 jobs. And so to me, at the end of the day, it's about the workers on the ground and making sure that we're giving access to those workers. And, that trip to China resulted in shipments getting out the door. You look at our first beef shipment in many years, it's now out the door. Canola shipments are now going out the door. And so this is what workers and stakeholders have asked us to do, and we're there. Of course, we're there with making sure that we're protecting Canadians, that there's security provisions in place, and those will remain there. We always make sure that we're standing up for Canadians, and we'll continue to do that, but we need to be eyes wide open, pragmatic about our approach. China, second largest trading partner, the U.S., first largest trading partner, and so we'll continue having those conversations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Minister, you indicated the Canadian beef industry has something in the neighborhood of 350,000 employees or jobs in that industry. The figures I have available to me indicate that Canada exported $85,000 worth of beef to the UK in 2023. $25,000 worth of beef in 2024 and had no beef exports in 2025. Now, those amounts of revenue wouldn't pay the gas for the Prime Minister's jet to go and visit his friend in the UK. What I'd like to know from you, sir, is whether specific industry barriers, non-tariff barriers with the UK, preventing our beef exports to that country were discussed in the course of the support that Canada is offering to the UK accession to the CPTPP.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the member for that question. I mean, if you talk about the beef industry, and I've met with the Cattle Association more than once, and I think the conversation with them is continue to open doors for us so we can get our exports out. And I said, well, how quick can you get your exports out? And they said, well, there's a supply-demand issue. We need to get our cattle up there. We don't have enough cattle. Maybe within the next 24 months, we'll be able to have enough cattle to get to these new markets that you're opening up. But we do appreciate what you're doing. Of course, with the UK, there's considerations around carcass wash and hormone-free issues, which I've been on. And we need to continue having those conversations. But if you look at the CPTPP in terms of what it's done in terms of merchandise trade, if you look at what it's done for Canadian beef, just some numbers I think for people watching on the screen is Canadian beef exports to the CPTPP's largest economy, Japan, increased 5 years to more than $361 million.
Right.
So
I'm going to
18%
interrupt
increase.
there, just because we're talking about the UK today.
Yep.
I want to know if there have been specific discussions about those very barriers that you mentioned. It's the carcass wash. It's a non-tariff barrier. Also, the growth promotants that are used in Canadian cattle industry. Both of those processes are widely accepted internationally, but the UK holds them up to prevent our products from being exported there. And, sir, I come from Western Canada, and there's a hell of a lot of cattle out there. So, with respect, sir, I don't think that market supply in our ability to export is a serious issue. But please, tell me about the barriers.
I mean, the Canadian Cattle Association, I'm a Western. I was born in Calgary, and this is something that they've said to me directly in terms of supply and demand, and you're seeing that on the impact of beef prices in our grocery stores because of supply and demand. And if you look at it historically, what's happened in that industry, this is something that they clearly explained to me. But, I mean, coming back to the question on the UK, I've had many counterparts I've had many discussions with my counterpart, even last night, on many of these issues of, whether it's pensions, whether it's beef, and we've continued to have those conversations, and so I'll be very open on that. Of course, right now, as I said to your colleague, 99% access. But what the CPTPP allows us to do is there's now mechanisms once they're ratified into the CPTPP, there's mechanisms to discuss non-tariff barriers. And so coming back to how we can facilitate discussions, the CPTPP will have further access to having those conversations in terms of discussing non-tariff barriers and hopefully resolving beef access. But currently, as it stands, my conversations with the cattle farmers, with the Cattle Association is around what are you doing with Indonesia? What are you doing in some of the other markets? Of course, the UK is important. Please continue to work on that. But our supply won't meet that demand until the next 24 months, so please keep that in mind.
You'll know, of course, Minister, that the Canadian Cattle Association has called on the Government of Canada to not support this accession. So clearly there are bigger issues there. It's not simply a question of supply, and they don't seem to be happy with other benefits being gained. But I'd like to know if the Government of Canada will commit to using dispute resolution for these non-tariff barrier issues with the UK. This is not a new issue, as I'm sure the Minister is aware that it's been outstanding now for years.
Yeah, I mean, look, when it comes back to what we want to do next in terms of the energy is there to continue having those conversations. Beef and cheese go hand in hand, right? I mean, they want access, to our dairy market. We want our beef over there. That's a conversation we'll continue to have. It's not one against the other, but again, having those active conversations, and we'll continue to have those conversations. I stayed engaged with the beef industry. Western Canada, it matters to farmers over there. It matters to me as a trade minister, but also as a Calgarian, and I'll continue to work on that.
So, Minister, you're really suggesting that we're being punished by the UK, similar to the manner in which China was punishing Canada with canola tariffs.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say we're being punished. If you look at trade numbers since 2016, our trade growth is over 50%. And so we're opening doors. Exporters are benefiting from our agreement with the UK. And so we'll continue making sure that we're having those conversations. Look, with your neighbor, you'll always have differences. And we'll need to continue talking about that to work out the differences. And so right now, like I said, 99% access. We're hoping to get to 100%. I'll work hard on that 1%.
Minister,
thank you very much. I'm sorry, Mr. McKenzie.
Thank you,
With a strong connection to
Just so we know, this is Carol Anstey. She's an MP from Newfoundland, and she gives a great speech here. Let's check her out.
Newfoundland and Labrador, so it's my honor today to get up and speak to this Opposition Day motion. Let me begin first and foremost by wishing you, my constituents in the Long Range Mountains, and all Canadians a happy, healthy, and prosperous New Year. As we look ahead to the challenges before us, this debate on the Canadian Sovereignty Act is about a simple but urgent question. Will Canada once again be a country that builds, produces, and invests in itself, or will we continue down a path that leaves our resources undeveloped, our capital fleeing abroad, and too many communities, especially rural ones, falling behind? The Opposition Day motion is about restoring Canadian economic sovereignty by making it easier to build, invest, and innovate here at home while recognizing the growing urban-rural divide in our country. It's about being straightforward with Canadians by calling on the government to remove federal laws and taxes that block resource development and industrial industrial growth, including policies like the electric vehicle mandate that disproportionately hurt rural Canadians, unlock our natural resources to rebuild communities that depend on them, reward businesses that invest in Canada through a Canada First reinvestment tax cut, and protect Canadian innovation so Canadian jobs, resources, and ideas stay in Canadians' hands. We are proposing solutions that restore investment confidence and get this country building again. And it is in that spirit this motion is also about affordability. Conservatives know that affordability starts with opportunity. When we build more at home, we create jobs, we increase incomes, and strengthen the economic foundation that makes life more affordable for Canadians. This motion is also about an invitation to work together to produce real results for the challenges that Canadians are facing. Canadians are doing what they're supposed to do. They're working hard, they're running businesses, they're raising families, and they're trying to plan for the future. What they're struggling with is a system that keeps adding cost, complexity, and uncertainty instead of applying common sense. Canada is one of the richest nations in the world. We're rich in natural resources, we are rich in talent, we are rich in opportunity, and yet Canadians are struggling. Families are making harder choices. Businesses are delaying decisions and investment. Communities are wondering what comes next. I hear it all the time from people in my riding in Newfoundland and Labrador. We are one of the richest places in the country when it comes to natural resources, yet we continue to experience some of the weakest economic outcomes. And Canadians are rightly asking why a country so blessed keeps holding itself back. And that concern is exactly why the oil and gas emissions cap matters so much, because for Newfoundland and Labrador's offshore industry, which is one of the cleanest and most highly regulated in the world, federal uncertainty and caps drive away investment, delay projects, and threaten good-paying jobs. I want to drill down into this a little further because I know the government will hide behind the budget that signaled a shift in how it approaches oil and gas emissions policy. However, the government did not definitively repeal or provide a clear direction on the cap. It talked about other measures, and if those measures were met, then the cap would no longer be required. And this is leaving uncertainty about whether and how a cap might be implemented in the future. This lack of certainty matters for investors and industry because without a clear legislative commitment on whether the emissions cap will exist or be enforceable, businesses cannot confidently plan long-term development. Investors need predictable, stable policy, not vague conditions on future technologies. This is exactly why the Canadian Sovereignty Act matters. Its explicit removal of the emissions cap delivers the clarity and certainty that foreign and domestic capital require to invest in Canada's resource sector and support jobs across the country. This is so important to Newfoundland and Labrador. Therefore, I want to re-emphasize that the government presents this policy as a cap on emissions. Conservatives have been clear that in practice, this is a cap on jobs, it's a cap on revenue, and it's a cap on opportunity. Industry leaders have described this cap as not just a cap on production, but also a cap on investment, including Jim Keating, the Chief Executive Officer of the Oil and Gas Corporation of Newfoundland and Labrador, who was responsible for overseeing and promoting the development of our offshore oil and gas resources. He warned that this approach undermines Canada's ability to attract and retain long-term capital. Investment decisions are made years in advance. Companies need certainty. They need clarity, and they need confidence that if they invest in Canada, the rules will not change halfway through the project. Global demand for oil and gas has not disappeared, and when Canada produces less, someone else produces more. Reducing Canadian production does not reduce global demand. It simply shifts production elsewhere. Canada produces energy with some of the highest environmental and labour standards in the world. When production is pushed out of Canada and into countries with weaker standards, global emissions increase. That does nothing to protect the environment. It simply costs Canadians jobs and investment. In Newfoundland and Labrador, offshore oil and gas is not just a policy discussion, it's how families make a living. It's how young people see a future at home, and it's also how we fund healthcare, education, and infrastructure. This is why Conservatives have been honest about what this policy does. It's a job-killing cap that hurts workers without helping the environment. The emissions cap also creates uncertainty across the broader economy. Energy projects support supply chains, service industries, and local businesses. When investment slows, the impact is felt far beyond the energy sector itself. Investment is so important to our economy and our country right now, which is why this motion also advances a Canada First reinvestment tax cut. This is a practical measure that lets Canadians reinvest capital back into Canadian businesses and projects, keeping investment, jobs, and growth at home instead of driving them out of the country. If small businesses, housing providers, innovators, and investors reinvest capital back into Canada, it would unlock domestic investment, boost productivity, and keep capital from leaving the country. Even independent tax experts have described this idea as a potential game changer because it rewards reinvestment in Canadian companies rather than punishing success. This is about keeping capital here, putting it to work here, and strengthening our economy from the ground up. When businesses reinvest in Canada, Canadian workers benefit, communities grow, and government revenues increase without raising taxes on families, again, making life more affordable for Canadians. This matters deeply for Newfoundland and Labrador, where our economy is powered by small and medium-sized businesses. Family enterprises, fish harvesters, construction firms, tourism operators, and...
All right, gang, they're kicking in the House right now, so we're going to flip over and watch some statements. Wednesday starts really late in the House of Commons. They don't do a very long morning. Anyways, let's jump right over to that. We've got it here. Let's go.
The Liberals talked a good story for over 10 years on this project, but failed to hit the finish line. In the meantime, we're waiting. Every year of delay costs us real economic opportunity. Restoring these wharves could create well-paying local jobs, strengthen domestic supply chains, and position Port Colborne as a strategic industrial hub while helping protect Canada's economic sovereignty. This project is shovel-ready. The partners are ready. The benefits are clear. It's time to pull the trigger and get the job done.
The Honourable Member for Quebec Centre. On January 1st, my friend and canoe camping companion, André Provencher, left us all too early after a courageous battle with cancer. Passionate about local news and an ardent defensor of Quebec culture, Mr. Provencher held management positions at TVA, Télé-Québec, and Cogeco. He also founded La Presse Télé, which produced several well-known series, including Les Parents, Les Chefs, and En Direct de l'Univers. He had the digital transformation. He led it, of the daily newspapers, Le Nouvelliste et Le Soleil, and presided over the creation of the Fonds Québec Culture. Passionate, honest, and loyal in both friendship and business, André had a knack for spotting talent and helping it flourish. On behalf of all the members of this House, I offer his partner Rachel and his sons Paul, Bruno, and Francois our deepest condolences.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, 10 years ago, this government campaigned on a promise to run, quote, modest deficits of less than $10 billion to fund historic investments in infrastructure, unquote, and then let the budget balance itself. For 10 years, they ran increasing deficits, failed to build the infrastructure, ignored the promise, and claimed that all that really mattered was declining debt to GDP. In 2024, the then finance minister said that the then $42 billion deficit was a line she would not cross. Then she crossed the line and resigned when the deficit hit $60 billion. Last year, the Prime Minister ran as the guy who would finally rein in spending, reduce debt to GDP, and build at speeds not seen in decades. Today, the deficit is $80 billion, debt to GDP is rising, and nothing is being built. Canada's economy is under attack, and Canadians need their government to succeed. But a strong, sovereign, self-reliant, fiscally sustainable Canada can't be built out of recycled, broken, Liberal promises.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellan. Mr. Speaker, With Parliament back in session, Canada faces a new reality. The challenges ahead are clear. A world marked by the breakdown of the international order and economic pressures affecting our families, workers, and businesses. In face of this change, our government is choosing to act and not react. We are strengthening Canada from within by supporting our businesses and securing our supply chains. We are building a more resilient economy focused on innovation, energy, and diversified trade partnerships. A strong economy is fundamental to our sovereignty, our security, and to our ability to defend our values in a more unstable world. In this new year, we invite all parliamentarians to work together constructively. Canadians expect us to be united and focused on the national interest. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Oxford.
Mr. Speaker, despite our differences, one truth still unites Canadians: the strength, resilience, and the talent of our people. And Oxford is home to many of these superstars. From the hallways at Ingersoll District Collegiate, astronaut Jeremy Hansen is reaching beyond the stars as he looks to make history as the first Canadian to go to the moon. Ingersoll's Ella Shelton will be representing Team Canada at the for the women's hockey team at the Olympics in Italy. For them, it's more than just a milestone. It's more than just a personal celebration. It's about reflecting on our community and what we stand for. We work hard. We stand strong. We help one another. We innovate. We lead. And we create opportunities for others to succeed. Colleagues, join me in wishing Jeremy and Ella every success in the exciting weeks ahead, because we are proud of Canada and the best is yet to come.
The honourable member for Toronto St. Paul's.
Mr. Speaker, for many families across Canada, Alzheimer's is not an abstract illness. It's a daily reality, lived in small moments and carried by loved ones who show up with patience and care. January is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, a time to wear the forget-me-not as a symbol of hope, and a time to recognize the more than 750,000 Canadians living with dementia and the millions of family members and caregivers who walk alongside them every day. Alzheimer's affects far more than memory. It touches relationships, independence, and dignity. I want to praise the vital work of the Alzheimer's Societies across Canada who provide support, education, and advocacy for people living with dementia and those who care for them. As our population ages, this issue will touch more than families. That's why awareness, research, and compassionate care matter now more than ever. To everyone living with Alzheimer's and to the caregivers and advocates beside them, we see you, we value you, and we will keep working to support you.
The honourable member for Wellington, Halton Hills North.
Mr. Speaker, Beijing's foreign interference is the biggest threat to the security of Canada. That's what the Prime Minister told Canadians last spring. Less than a year later, the Prime Minister has entered into a so-called strategic partnership with Beijing, yet we still have no foreign influence transparency registry. When the bill was being debated, the government said it hoped to have the registry up and running in 12 months ahead of a federal election. 19 months and one election later, and still no registry. Another election could pass without the protection of a registry. One wonders if the government delayed the registry till now to avoid offending Beijing's leadership. And for the same reason, Liberal MPs were told recently to cut their trip short to Taiwan. Canadians deserve a government that treats foreign interference seriously as a threat to our national security. The government needs to implement the Foreign Influence Transparency Registry now.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, a great poet whose work is not recorded in any collection, but rather in our landscapes, has left us. Henri Dorion was a geographer, toponymist, professor, diplomat, and architect of the Quiet Revolution. As the first president of the Commission de Toponymie du Québec, he made our Quebec territory known and even named it. He chaired the Commission d'études sur l'intégrité du territoire du Québec, the first major effort to define our borders in detail, a task that remains unfinished to this day. Henri Dorion distinguished himself internationally as Quebec's delegate to Mexico, Russia, and Ukraine, as well as chair of the United Nations Group of Experts on Geographical Names. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I would like to offer my sincere condolences to his four daughters and his loved ones. His memory will live on throughout our vast territory. Thank you.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Mount Royal.
On September 11th, 2001, I was in New York when terrorists attacked the World Trade Center. I saw the bravery and solidarity and shared the anguish firsthand. As a Canadian, I was incredibly proud of how we rose to the occasion to support our closest friend and ally. From the hospitality showed by the people of Gander, to fundraising campaigns to support the victims, to our government being the first one to suggest that NATO invoke Article 5, we were there for the United States. And as we have for generations, our troops bravely fought side by side with Americans in Afghanistan. More than 40,000 Canadians served in this conflict. 158 of our soldiers died and over 2,000 were injured. I know that members of this place will want to join me in extending our deepest respect and gratitude to the men and women who served. Canadians will never forget their sacrifice. Our American friends should not forget it either. Hear, hear.
He's a bitch.
The honourable member for Calgary Centre.
Hear, hear. Mr. Speaker, announcements are easy. Organize a press conference and tell the hungry crowd of reporters all the great things you're going to do. Getting things done requires work. If this Liberal government were judged on its announcements, then this country would be riding a 10-year wave of success. Sadly, not so. For announcements to translate to results, economic activity and paychecks for Canadians, something has to get delivered. Over 10 years of not delivering has left Canada as the economic laggard of the developed world. Conservatives worked with the government to amend and pass Bill C-5, giving the Prime Minister incredible powers to approve projects quickly. What are the outcomes? No projects have been approved, and they haven't removed a single regulatory barrier. This smoke and mirrors show must end and action must begin. We've introduced a motion to pass the Canadian Sovereignty Act. Will the government work with us and agree to support our motion to repeal the Federal Industrial Carbon Tax and the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act?
L'honorable député de Vaudreuil.
Honourable member for Vaudreuil. Mr. Speaker, next week, Canada will write a new page in its space history with the Artemis 3 mission. For the first time in more than 50 years, humans will leave Earth's orbit and head for the moon. This is an important moment not only for science, but for Canadians and all of humanity.
Artemis 2 represents the next great chapter in Canadian space exploration. Following in the footsteps of great Canadians like the late Marc Garneau, Roberta Bondar, Chris Hadfield, David Saint-Jacques, and so many more, and built on the unprecedented collaboration between NASA and the Canadian space engineers and scientists, Colonel Jeremy Hansen will break barriers by becoming the first Canadian and the first non-American to travel around our moon. On behalf of all members of this House and all Canadians, I wish Colonel Hansen and the Artemis 2 crew a safe journey and a successful mission. You carry the pride of everyone in this House and all Canadians with you. Godspeed. Excellent.
The honourable member for Swift Current Grasslands, Kindersley.
Mr. Speaker, Canada has the highest food price inflation in the G7. That's the Liberal record on full display for the whole world to see. But instead of fixing it, the Prime Minister raises taxes on fertilizer, manufacturing and transportation, all of which leads to higher food prices. Reversing Liberal policies that punish Canadian agriculture would be a good start. But we could also grow even more food here at home. Saskatchewan is already the breadbasket of the world, but there's still room for us to grow and expand the available farmland. Right now, there are shovel-ready irrigation projects waiting for approvals, like the ones around Lake Diefenbaker. The Westside Irrigation Rehabilitation Project alone would open up 100,000 acres of irrigated land to grow more food and specialty crops. Studies show this project will add $13 billion to our GDP, create 80,000 jobs, and generate over $1 billion in tax revenue. The Liberals have so much to learn from rural Canada. This is one of many promising resourceful projects that we want to build in Saskatchewan. And all the government needs to do is let our farmers and industry do what they've always done best and lead the way forward.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, today I would like to highlight the exceptional work of the Organizing Committee for the 59th Quebec Games Finals held in my riding of Trois-Rivières, bringing together more than 3,500 athletes from across Quebec. They aimed to receive a donation of $1,000 to Excellence Sportive Mauricie, and thanks to tight and responsible management, $350,000 will ultimately be donated to promote sports in our region. The Games also generated nearly $29 million in economic spin-offs for the region. And above all, none of this would have been possible without the involvement of 2,318 volunteers. Their commitment was at the heart of these extraordinary games. In conclusion, I would like to issue a challenge to Blainville, and I wish you success in organizing the next games.
Supported the passage of Bill C-5, which gave the Prime Minister extraordinary authority to approve nation-building projects fast. The Prime Minister claimed that with these powers, the government would unleash our economic potential. He claimed that we would build at speeds not seen in generations. But sadly, the Prime Minister's promises are not reflected in reality. Canadians in the mining sector, the oil and gas sector, and others tell me that this Liberal government hasn't lifted a finger to make it easier to get permits and build projects. That's why Conservatives are calling for the passage of the Canada Sovereignty Act, which will remove barriers and cut red tape that is stopping these projects. We want the Prime Minister to live up to his promises. Conservatives are giving him the tools to get the job done. So why isn't he using it? The Prime Minister has no excuse. The time for fancy rhetoric is over. The time for action is now. Yeah.
The Honourable Member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate the close and growing relationship between Ireland and Canada. Today, the Irish Minister for Culture, Communications and Sport, Patrick O'Donovan, and our Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture launched Canada-Ireland 180. This initiative, planned for 2027, will commemorate the 180th anniversary of the Great Famine Migration in 1847, when over 100,000 Irish people landed on our shores. Irish Canadians have become a core part of Canada's history, national identity, and culture. This initiative will celebrate that shared heritage through events, art, screen, and sport. Nothing grabs the heart more than creative storytelling, so the collaboration between screen industries in both countries will be moving. Special mention to the Canadian industry, which has a strong presence in my riding of Etobicoke Lakeshore. We will celebrate Gaelic sports, but the gloves might come off if we meet in the World Cup. But we will hug and toast each other after the competition, as family does. Sláinte.
Oral questions. Questions orales. L'honorable.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent, Akiawenrak.
What is up with this?
Mr. Speaker, the primary concern for all Canadian families is the cost of groceries, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, food inflation is hitting hard. 6.2%, the worst inflation in the G7. And one of the factors is the Liberal fuel tax, which costs families up to $1,000, according to the PBO. We Conservatives want to help families, want to work with the government. Is the government ready to abolish this Liberal tax to allow Canadian families to breathe? The Honourable Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. We know that the Conservatives are allergic to good news. But let me remind them what we announced on Monday. On top of the new benefit for groceries and essential goods, $500 million for the Strategic Response Fund to help the country's logistics. We want to be able to grow more in Canada, more funding for food banks, a national strategy for food, better labelling laws. I hope the Conservatives will help us and unite with us on this matter. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the issue is that the minister is strong in rhetoric, but not in results. 2 years ago, he was proud of assembling groceries, and what happened since? The worst food inflation in the G7. What he does doesn't work. That's why 2.2 million Canadians have to go to food banks. In Neuchâtel, on Boulevard Bastien, Amélie and Frédéric, there's been a 31% increase in food bank use. We need to directly help families. A good way to do that is by abolishing the Liberal gas tax. Will they do it for the good of all Canadians? The Honourable Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, my colleague is known for his rhetoric, but on this side of the House, we're known for action. On Monday, what we announced, Mr. Speaker, was a new benefit for groceries and essential goods. The Conservatives can laugh as much as they want, but 12 million Canadians will benefit at the end of the month because Canadian families, Mr. Speaker, expect responsible action in this House. Will the Conservatives rise to the challenge, and will they support the government to help Canadians?
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Gateway.
Mr. Speaker, Canada now has the worst record of food inflation in the entire G7, with grocery prices up 6%. That's an extra $1,000 per average family in Canada to buy groceries, and costs have doubled since this Prime Minister has taken office. That's twice the rate of food inflation than the United States, and over 2 million Canadians a month are having to go to food banks. But the Liberals continue to pile on with the cost with their industrial carbon tax and the fuel standard tax. When will they finally deliver real and permanent relief for Canadian families?
The Honourable Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Nature.
Mr. Speaker, you might want to know that the member for Battle River Crowfoot represents the second largest canola-producing riding in all of Alberta. The Advanced Biofuels Association of Canada says that the clean fuel regulations will create or preserve the average farm revenue by $60,000. That is money in the pockets of farmers in the member for Battle River Crowfoot's ridings. Why is he not standing up for the farmers in his ridings? Because we are.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Gateway.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have heard this all before. Band-aid solutions that the most Canadians won't even qualify for. Families need real action that actually lowers cost of food at the grocery store. Conservatives are ready to fast-track any legislation that will help deliver real results for Canadians. When will the Liberals get serious about tackling food inflation and introduce legislation to permanently scrap the industrial carbon tax and fuel standard tax that are driving up the cost for farmers, truckers, and every family trying to put food on the table?
Honorable Ministre des Finances.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are good talkers, but they have a short memory, I can tell you, Mr. Speaker. Because on Monday, Canadians have noticed what's happening, Mr. Speaker, that they're going to have a rebate for
He shouldn't talk about anything being short.
grocery and essential. But in addition to that, and let me help them for the householder so they don't forget to tell the constituent, there'll be $500 million from the Strategic Response Fund to strengthen food production in the country, immediate expensing for greenhouses, additional funding for food banks, a national food strategy, work toward a standard price unit. Mr. Speaker, instead of shouting in the House, they should get on board, support Canadians, and make this country.
The Honourable Member for Middlesex, London.
Inflation is up 6.2%, the highest in the G7. And grocery prices are rising twice as fast since this Prime Minister took office. Families will pay over $1,000 more this year just to eat. Farmers, truckers, and food processors have been clear. The Liberals' industrial carbon tax and their new fuel standards tax are driving up costs from field to fridge. Conservatives were ready to act. So will this Liberal government work with us to scrap these taxes, boost grocery competition, and cut red tape for our farmers?
Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker, all fall, these Conservatives across the aisle quoted Canada Food Banks time and time again in their litigation on the cost of food. And now when the government steps up to help 12 million families, Mr. Speaker, with up to $1,900 to pay for those very costs of food, they are fighting against it. Why can't these Conservative MPs listen to their constituents and get out of the way and help those very Canadians they claim to care about?
The honourable member for Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, here's the cold hard truth. If two parents work full time and they make over $14.87 an hour, their families get nothing. That's right, you heard me. Most families won't even qualify for this rebate. So once again, the Liberals gaslight Canadians while we see 2.2 million visits to food banks every single month. Liberal taxes and policies are what's driving up the cost of food. Recycling their broken policy does nothing to lower it. So when will the government stop pretending that rebates will fix inflation and instead deal with the root cause?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Family.
Mr. Speaker, these Conservatives like to talk about making life affordable, but every time Canadians ask for help and the government provides that help, whether it's through affordable childcare, which, by the way, Mr. Speaker, saves families up to $16,000 a year, or the school food program, which reaches families all across the country, or this new tax benefit that will help 12 million Canadians, they say, oh, that's not exactly the right thing. They have no answers, Mr. Speaker, not for their constituents, not for any Canadian.
L'honorable député de Belleuil-Chambly.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister said that China had made commitments to remove tariffs on Quebec pork. The industry had never heard about that. They were surprised, but pleasantly so, and we understand. This morning, Antoine Trépanier tells us that this is simply not true. Mr. Speaker, you can't do that to someone, create false hope. Can the government confirm that there is or there is no agreement on pork with China? The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Speaker, the reality is nous continuons d'engager.
We continue to work with our partners, all members of the industry, with pork, beef, canola, agriculture as a whole. At the same time, we will continue to diversify our supply chain for our internal economy. That is in the national interest, and that is our plan on this side of the House. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Pork, we just need something, even just a noise. But there isn't even an oink in the agreement. The Prime Minister is apparently the second coming of God. He said, I have a deal with China on pork. Will the government at least let us know, using the word pork, somewhere in their answer, to say that there is a priority being established to removing tariffs on pork? Because Quebecers are the biggest purchasers of electric cars, so we are interested in this deal. The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs. As I said, Mr. Speaker, we have had discussions with China on a number of sectors of our economy, including pork, including beef, including canola, and every single time we continue to say that we are working in Canada's interest. We want an agreeable agreement for our pork sector and our economy as a whole. That is our strategy on this side of the House. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, an agreeable agreement is probably going to make the pigs very happy. In any case, the Prime Minister this morning, the Minister, spoke to Radio-Canada, saying that whilst we on the Bloc Québécois were fixated on history, they were fixated on the forests of Quebec. But up to now, what has the government done for Quebec forests apart from refusing the industry's proposal? Are they that bad in economy, as bad in economy as they are in Quebec's history? The Honourable Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, I can assure my colleague we are as good in the matter of economy than we are in the matter of history. And Mr. Speaker, what I can say is that we don't have to hear reminders from the Bloc Québécois. We are working with the forestry industry, and sometimes we don't remember something, but we have invested hundreds of millions to help the forestry industry, Mr. Speaker. people understand we've always been here for workers, we've always been here for the industry, and we'll always be here to defend the interest of Canada.
Member for Newmarket Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, there are critical statistics every member of Parliament must take seriously. We have 2.2 million visits at food banks every single month. Canada's food inflation is 6.2%, and that is double of the U.S. This year, it will cost $17,600 to feed a family. That is a national emergency we must take seriously, and Conservatives want to expedite a real solution. So we were asking, will this Liberal government immediately table legislation to cut taxes that punish those who bring food to our tables and boost competition in grocery chains?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Sport.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And to the member's question, not only do we take the statistics very seriously, we also take the recommendations of the organizations who are working to feed hungry Canadians extremely seriously. And the top recommendation for Food Banks Canada was to create a groceries and essentials benefit. Now, the Conservatives have a chance to support that motion and to vote in favor of this motion and help Canadians at the grocery store, Mr. Speaker. And we know, based on the research that's been done by independent agencies, that industrial carbon prices not only just have a negligible impact or zero impact, many of them actually help. So if the Conservatives want to help Canadians at the grocery store, they should vote in favor of the grocery and essentials benefit.
Honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, the reality is they have tried this before and it only has made matters worse. Canada is a country full of farms and fields, and yet we are known as the food inflation capital of the G7. Shameful. Food inflation has doubled since 2019. This is a homegrown crisis caused by high taxes on farmers, truckers, and food processors, lack of competition in grocery chains, and reckless inflationary spending. So I ask again, will this Liberal government immediately cut taxes that punish those who put food on our tables and boost competition in grocery chains?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Farmers know that the #1 cause of food inflation in Canada and globally is climate change, Mr. Speaker. And when they're listing off the products that are most affected by climate change, they often list lettuce, which is impacted by climate change in California, coffee, which is imported to Canada. We don't grow coffee here, and beef.
Give me a break on climate change. Really, come on, give me a break on climate change. Everybody knows, no such thing. There's weather, that's it. Seasons.
Which is impacted by climate change, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives can continue to bury their heads in the sand and pretend that climate change doesn't exist, Mr. Speaker, but we are working with farmers to increase the number of domestic producers, Mr. Speaker. We're working to build more greenhouses so that Canadians can buy more Canadian food. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Haldimand Norfolk.
While the Prime Minister spends his time with the world elites, life at home is getting harder for Canadians, including families in Haldimand Norfolk. The 2026 food price report is alarming. This year, it will cost $17,600 to feed a family of 4, which is $1,000 more than it cost last year. The Prime Minister's industrial carbon tax and food standards tax are driving up the food prices. Will he scrap the taxes and bring down the cost of food for Canadians?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Seniors.
The National Institute on Aging's 4th annual report was just released, and it commends the actions this government is taking. They agree with us, and their data shows that reducing expenditures in one area can result in an overall reduction in hardship as money is freed up for other household needs. And that is why organizations like Food Banks Canada agrees that the groceries and essentials benefit will make a real difference in the lives of Canadians, helping them to afford baby formula, helping them to afford lettuce, helping them to afford coffee and toilet paper. Mr. Speaker, I do not understand why the Conservatives want to be obstructionist about feeding 12 million Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Haldimand Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, the facts are clear. Statistics Canada shows that food inflation is up 6.2%. That's the highest in the G7. I remember as a university student putting food back on the shelf because I couldn't afford it. And I am so blessed today. But even recently, I didn't buy a package of meat because it cost 4 times more than I paid for it last year. Imagine what average Canadians who are working 2 jobs are going through, sacrificing every single day just to get by. Will these Liberals give Canadians a break and cut the industrial carbon tax and the fuel standards tax?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Like many of my constituents in Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke, I grew up in a single-parent household. I have a single mother, a handicapped sister, and making ends meet was really challenging. Mr. Speaker, it's families like those that we have in mind, like the ones that I grew up in, like the ones that exist in my riding, in that member's riding. Those are the ones that we want to feed. And Food Banks Canada is supporting what we're doing. Again, I don't understand why the Conservatives are opposed to feeding families.
The Honourable Member for Sarnia, Lambton, Bikidwanong.
Mr. Speaker, food inflation is up 6.2%, the highest in the G7. A family pays now more than $17,000 a year for food, and 2.2 million people every month are lined up at food banks, thanks to the Liberals' industrial carbon tax and fuel standard tax adding up to about 17 cents a litre, hitting farmers, truckers and food prices. Conservatives are ready to fast-track legislation to reverse these devastating impacts. Will the Liberals immediately introduce a bill to eliminate the industrial carbon tax, the fuel standards tax, to boost grocery competition and cut red tape for our farmers?
The Honourable Minister for Women and Gender Equality.
Mr. Speaker, while the members opposite minimize our affordability plan, let's take an example of a young family of 4 this year. With supports like the Canada Groceries and Essentials Benefit, the Canada Child Benefit, affordable childcare, dental care, the National School Food Program, and the fact that we cut taxes for millions of Canadians, this family will save over $50,000 a year, Mr. Speaker. This is real affordability. So while the members opposite continue to obstruct Parliament, we're going to stand up for Canadians.
Good job.
Member for Sarnia, Lambton, Bikidwanong.
Mr. Speaker, these Liberals take thousands of dollars from Canadians. They return a pittance. Canadians are not fooled. Food prices in Canada are rising twice as fast as in the U.S. and twice as fast since the Prime Minister took office. Grocery prices are up 5%, and his response to the cost of living crisis is to tell Canadians to sacrifice more. But Canadians have sacrificed enough. With the ever-increasing costs to eat and heat, there's little left for Canadians to give up. When will the government finally stop asking families to sacrifice and commit to legislation today to make life affordable for hardworking Canadians?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I don't understand how the Conservatives can look their constituents in the eye when all they do in this House is obstruct what we're doing and the progress that we're making. We cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. We're making the National School Food Program permanent. This is going to help 400,000 kids eat healthy eat healthy meals at school. And we're saving families $16,000 per year through the affordable childcare. Mr. Speaker, we're providing relief for 12 million Canadians through our Canada Groceries and Essentials Benefit. This is going to make a real difference, especially for families in my riding of Mississauga-Streetsville. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for King Vaughan.
Mr. Speaker, seniors are choosing between medication and groceries. Food Banks Canada has reported 2.2 million visits in a single month. 8.3% are seniors, up from 6.8%. Food inflation is the highest in the G7. Canadians need our help. Conservatives have proposed real solutions. Eliminate the industrial carbon tax, eliminate the fuel standard tax, and cut red tape on farmers. Will the Prime Minister show compassion for Canadians and work with us to provide real relief, yes or no?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Seniors.
Unlike the Conservatives, our actions are compassionate. Our actions show compassion for seniors. We increased OAS for seniors over 75 when they wanted to bring it down to below 65. We have protected OAS, ensuring that it's indexed to inflation, and we just guaranteed that low-income seniors will get the help that they need to fight rising food costs, something that we cannot control. But what we can control is helping families afford the food that they need with the Groceries and Essentials Benefit. This will buy up to $950 more food for a single low-income senior.
The Honourable Member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, there are new retirees who have not received their old age pensions for 9 months because of problems with the new Carem software. And yet yesterday, what did Liberals have to say to these people? Their leader replied that software problems just happens from time to time. He replied that it was a fear-mongering campaign. The Liberals were made aware of this problem in June by their own officials. And clearly, with answers like that, we understand that they have done absolutely nothing. When are they finally going to kick into gear?
Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My department is processing payments towards a better system. Delays have affected 0.2% of requests. The department is committed to dispersing the monies rapidly and efficiently. We are working tooth and nail to reduce these problems. If someone has issues accessing their old age security, we encourage them to contact Service Canada. The Honourable Member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, if everything were fine, as the government leader said, we wouldn't have seniors who haven't received their pensions since last spring. We wouldn't have seniors who are receiving the wrong amounts and who are going to have their future benefits cut. This isn't fear-mongering, Mr. Speaker. These are real people with real warnings that the new system is causing them problems. And when the government causes problems, its job is to find solutions to these problems, not to say, well, these things happen. So when will the government finally take seniors' problems seriously? The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House. Of course, we take the situation eminently seriously, giving benefits to those who must receive them, and the government has modernised its system, which is good news. Its software, which was obsolete, that now allows seniors to access the system online, and a better system. Some people have been affected. That's too many, of course, but we ask these people to contact Service Canada, where we will solve the problem.
Honourable Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Mr. Speaker, between 2011 and 2021, home ownership among 30 to 34-year-olds fell from 60% to 52%. From 2019 to 2024, for every 100 adults added to the Canadian population, only 12 homes intended for ownership were built. That is less than half the rate of the earlier decades. So my question is, how does the Prime Minister expect young Canadians to ever buy their first home when his government keeps using the same old policies that haven't worked for the last 10 years?
Housing and infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the good news is that our government has brought forward the first-time homebuyers GST break, which is up to $50,000 off of their first home purchase for young Canadians. This is a new measure. It was stalled in the fall session by the opposition, unfortunately. We're ready to bring this forward, Mr. Speaker. We're ready to deliver affordability for young Canadians.
Hear, hear. Member for Parry Sound of Muskoka.
Well, Mr. Speaker, new home sales are down 45% in the GTA and 56% in Vancouver. And I'll tell you what, rebates don't matter to first-time home buyers if no homes are getting built. Nearly half of young Canadians are now considering leaving their home communities because they cannot afford to stay. So when will the minister listen to all the experts, the builders, the developers, the Conservatives, and remove the HST on all new homes under $1.3 million so that we can get builders building homes again?
Hear, hear.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it starts with first-time home buyers and not obstructing bills that will deliver relief and affordability for young Canadians. That's number one. Number two, we have record annual construction in Calgary, in Montreal, in Edmonton, in Ottawa. We have housing starts that were solid last year, the 5th best year in Canadian history. We will continue to build on that work with Build Canada Homes, which we expect the opposition's support on.
That's right. The Honourable Member for York-Durham.
It's a new year, Mr. Speaker, but it's the same old story for Canadians trying to buy a home. They can't. The Missing Middle Initiative reported this week that while the vast majority of Gen Z and millennials want to buy a home, only about half can realize that goal. Home ownership for them has decreased from 60% to 52%. Their ambition to buy a home has turned into uncertainty, and that uncertainty has turned into defeat. Missing Middle proposed 10 solutions. Not one of them was the government's plan for another bureaucracy to build non-market homes. So why is the government's plan so different from what sensible experts are recommending?
Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The good news is that we have Build Canada Homes starting up, one-stop shop for affordable housing and delivering housing for young Canadians in particular. Mr. Speaker, the opposition can support affordable housing. They've never done it before, but they can start now. They can start helping this government deliver affordability, whether that's new homes through Build Canada Homes or it's bringing down rents, which we're seeing rents drop across Canada for 30 straight months. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Langley Township, Fraser Heights.
The Prime Minister is not keeping his promise to young Canadians to help them buy their first home. In fact, according to the Missing Middle report, things are going in the wrong direction. Homeownership among 30-year-olds is at an all-time low. Less than half think they're ever going to own their own home, and housing starts aren't even keeping up with population growth. So here's an idea. We're feeling generous. Why doesn't the Prime Minister adopt our policies to cut bureaucracy so that homes get built and first-time Canadians can buy their first home? Thank you.
Great job.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
I have a great idea to the member opposite. This government has put a series of measures in place to help support young Canadians getting into their first-time home, to be able to build more housing supply in this country, whether or not it's Build Canada Homes, whether or not it's removing the GST up to $50,000 for new home buyers buying their first home. The Conservatives obstruct at every single pass. So that member has to go back and ask his constituents and answer to his constituents why they are standing in the way of the progress this government is seeking to advance. There's important measures in C-15. They should get on board and actually get a part of the solution, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup, Katascomic-Témiscouata. Mr. Speaker, the housing crisis being felt in the streets and homes of Quebec. Families are having to choose between rent and groceries. Young people are delaying their life plans because they can't afford an apartment. According to a Léger poll, 1 in 5 Quebec tenants struggled to pay rent last year. In Montreal, that figure is 1 in 4. This is not acceptable. After 10 years of this Liberal government, when will Quebecers have access to a truly affordable housing? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, over $1,800 will go to a family of 4 through our new Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit. This money will help families. It will help households make ends meet. We know the statistics. They are true. 1 in 5 households is having trouble with rent. This is why I am wondering, why are Conservatives blocking the work of Build Canada Homes? Why are they holding up our new Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit?
Member for Fleetwood, Port Hills.
Mr. Speaker, communities across Canada want to feel safe in their neighborhood and confident their government is taking action to prevent crime, especially given the rise of extortion in BC Lower Mainland. Can the Minister update this House on measures our government is taking to counter extortion, support law enforcement, and ensure our communities feel safe?
Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the rise in extortion in Surrey and the Lower Mainland is unacceptable, and I extend my support to the victims of extortion everywhere. This morning, I met with Premier Eby, and we committed to deploying up to 20 RCMP members to support law enforcement efforts. Mr. Speaker, we deployed 2 helicopters in the Surrey area, and in November, we announced $4 million in federal funding to bolster Surrey Police's efforts to tackle extortion threats. There are bills before this House, Mr. Speaker, that the opposition can support right now, like lawful access, to help us combat extortion in Canada.
The Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
For almost a year, Canada has endured an unprovoked economic attack by the United States and President Trump.
Conservatives worked to fast-track Bill C-5 that was supposed to fast-track nation-building projects. Unfortunately, it hasn't fast-tracked anything. Not a single new project has been approved. Not a single shovel has gone into the ground. There is an alternative. The Conservative Sovereignty Act would repeal anti-development legislation. It would speed approvals. It would create economic opportunity for Canada. Businesses and provinces that invest will be rewarded. Why won't the Liberals support this bill so that we can lessen our dependence on the American?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's good to see Conservatives finally coming around to the Liberal plan, which is precisely that, to diversify trade markets, to build our country up with Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum, Canadian ingenuity, Canadian know-how, and Canadian union men and women building our country together. The Conservatives' proposals were tested, had the ultimate test, a general election, Mr. Speaker. It didn't work, it didn't go so well. Canadians voted for the Prime Minister's plan to build Canada strong. That's what we're going to keep doing, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Mr. Speaker, what they promised in the election was that they were going to fast-track nation-building projects, and that's one of the reasons why Canadians voted for them. But unfortunately, they haven't actually fast-tracked anything. Not a single new nation-building project has been approved. Not a single shovel has gone in the ground for any of those projects. Bingo. We need a new approach. That's why the Canadian Sovereignty Act needs to be implemented. It will tear down the barriers to building these projects. It will create new economic opportunity and create thousands of good-paying jobs. I mean, they've stolen almost every single one of our policies. Why don't they steal this one for the benefit of Canadians?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we have nation-building projects going on right across this country. I would refer the member to his own province of Ontario, where we are in major developments in the nuclear sector, where we'll be developing the Crawford nickel mine, where we are going to build, Mr. Speaker, the North America's very first high-speed rail network from Quebec City to Toronto. We are going to build in British Columbia, whether it's LNG or whether it's the Northwest Corridor or Silicums, Mr. Speaker. We are building this country. We're building it big. We're building it strong.
The Honourable Member for Ponoka-Didsbury.
This Liberal Prime Minister has broken his promise to Canadians. He said he would build Canada strong, but in 8 months he hasn't approved a single new project. Instead, he's closing down agriculture research stations and firing scientists, including at the 120-year-old station in Lacombe. Conservatives introduced a motion this week to pass the Canadian Sovereignty Act. Will these Liberals vote for our legislation to repeal Liberal laws that block development, reward investment in Canada, protect Canadian innovation, or will they continue selling Canada out with their New World Order agenda?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
The Conservatives' ideas were tested in the election, and guess what? They lost, Mr. Speaker. And you know what? We're focused on something that's very clear, something that Canadians want. They want us to build this country. They want us to grow the economy, and that's exactly what we're doing, Mr. Speaker. We're going to build the largest infrastructure investment in Canadian history, with major projects across this country, building affordable homes for Canadians, using Canadian steel, Canadian lumber, and Canadian skilled trades, Canadian student workers, Mr. Speaker. We're diversifying our trade. We're expanding to new markets, investing in innovation. We're going to create the
Honourable Member for Ponoka-Didsbury.
Mr. Speaker, Liberals never let solutions get in the way of their ideology. While this jet-setting Prime Minister travels the world to glad hand and talk about his New World Order, food prices are up and families are struggling to put food on the table. In the meantime, this government is closing the very agricultural research centres that allow Canadian farms and agribusinesses to be so innovative. When will the Liberals finally understand that when we learn more, grow more, build more, and export more, incomes go up and life becomes more affordable for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Look, Mr. Speaker, we know this is going to be a difficult time for some, but this was the mandate that Canadians elected us for, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Streamlining research, collaboration with academia and private sector, prioritizing high-impact areas,
reducing duplication and aligning project with needs of farmers and ranchers across this country, Mr. Speaker. We're going to work with our stakeholders, Mr. Speaker, and move this industry and sector forward that has been neglected for over 20 years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Elmwood-Transcona.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect us to work together to improve their lives. In that spirit, we worked with the Liberals to pass Bill C-5, giving the Prime Minister sweeping powers to get projects built faster. Despite the press releases and photo ops, nothing has been built. When we build, Canadians get jobs, our economy grows, and life becomes more affordable. We have put forward a bill that repeals regulations that block development, rewards provinces who build, and protects Canadian innovation. Will the government work with us and pass the Canadian Sovereignty Act?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that's their platform, not ours. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we're focused on building one strong Canadian economy. Just Monday, Mr. Speaker, our Prime Minister announced a groceries and essentials benefit, putting $1,900 in the pockets of working families. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to build Canada strong. We're going to continue to focus on our economy. They're focused on obstruction. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, well said.
The honourable member for Terra Nova, the Peninsula.
Mr. Speaker, when Canada builds more and exports more, incomes rise, our dollar gets stronger, and life becomes more affordable. One of the first things I voted for was to give these Liberals extensive powers to approve projects at speeds never seen before. But despite all those Liberal slogans, they have not removed any barriers. Not a single new project has been approved. When will this Liberal government work with Conservatives to build a country that all of us will be proud of and approve the Canadian Sovereignty Act to have an independent economy?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And here we go again. Another round of just canned notes that doesn't address what this government is actually doing. It is another example of obstruction. I hear from this member's constituents. They support what government is doing. Building this country, investing in provinces, investing in rural communities, which this member represents. Stop the nonsense. Let's get to work. Canadians expect it. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians expect it.
The honourable member for Calgary Signal Hill.
Mr. Speaker, Conservatives voted for Bill C-5, but the Prime Minister's Major Projects Office has not approved any new projects. Worse, the Liberal mountain of anti-development laws is still in place. Mr. Speaker, when we build more and give Canadians jobs and opportunities, incomes and prosperity go up. Prime Minister, will your Liberal government support the Canadian Sovereignty Act to unleash development, protect Canadian innovation, and reward Canadians for building our country?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what can we say about this motion? It's a few things we're already doing, a few things Canadians rejected. Feels like the Leader of the Opposition found it in a jacket he hasn't worn in a while. It's time for some new ideas on this side. We've got some like the MOU with Alberta. It's an exciting time to be in Alberta. We're getting things built, and we invite the members opposite to get on board.
The Honourable Member for Kapuskasing, Timmins, Mushkegowuk.
Mr. Speaker, Northern Ontarians keep asking me, when will we finally unlock our economic potential? I reply, when this government finally decides to cut regulations. The Canadian Sovereignty Act is a chance to do exactly that. Repeal needless barriers. In Northern Ontario, economic sovereignty leads to affordability. When we grow our industries in mining, sawmills, pulp mills, agriculture and manufacture, income rise, affordability dies. I ask this government, will they work with us and deliver results for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker, thank you to to the Member of Parliament for Advocacy for Northern Ontario, a topic I'm always happy to get up and talk about. As the member knows, we've been there for Northern Ontario in many difficult and challenging situations, most recently working with Cap Paper to support that mill as they reorient their product to product that will be sellable across the world. Mr. Speaker, we'll be there for Northern Ontario, whether it's through the capacity of FedNor or direct supports to the lumber industry or supports for critical mining. The Northern Ontario knows they have a strong partner in the federal government.
The honourable member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals told us that they wanted to fast-track the construction of major projects. That is why we voted for Bill C-5. And yet today, absolutely nothing has changed. No barrier has been lifted. Bureaucracy is still stifling, and permitting still takes far too long. That is why Conservatives have proposed the Canadian Sovereignty Act, so that we can get more exported and get more built. Will the government vote in favour of our motion, or will it continue to hold back the economy? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, these ideas were put to the test last year during a general election. During that election, the Prime Minister's plan to build Canada and build Canada strong won the day. The approach proposed by the member opposite was rejected, which I assume is news to them. I would like to reiterate for my honourable colleague that the Port of Saguenay is one project that we announced, as well as the Contrecoeur Port, a major which will be a major boon to Quebec's logistics and supply chains. The honourable member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, January 17th was a historic moment for Canada. The Canadian government announced the launch of the Assault-Style Firearms Compensation Program in Montreal alongside representatives of the Quebec government. Quebec has a special role in Canada's public safety landscape due to, among other things, our history, our collective sensitivities, and our provincial legislative frameworks. Could the Secretary of State for Nature explain how Quebec-Ottawa partnership is essential for the success of both this program and our shared goals? The Honourable Secretary of State for Nature. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague for his question, which has to do with an issue very important to Quebecers and also to all Canadians. Canadians want this program to work. They want it to work well, and they want assault-style firearms off our streets. What will the Quebec Agreement do? It will allow Quebec to provide the assistance of the Sûreté du Québec to this program. And I would like to thank hunters and firearm owners across Canada who have signed up to the program so that these guns could be taken off our streets.
The Prime Minister wants to talk about the gap between rhetoric and reality. Well, last week, reality came in the form of 2 police cars in my driveway investigating a report of shots fired on my street. My neighbours are wondering if we're now in the line of fire of some extortionist. Wow. Surrey's Mayor Brenda Locke is asking this government to declare a state of emergency. Conservatives are asking, will this government stop with the rhetoric, restore mandatory minimums, and repeal their catch and release laws so criminals feel the consequences?
Here. The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives need to decide whether they're going to help us stop extortions or whether they're going to obstruct us giving law enforcement the tools they need in order to prevent these crimes from happening.
That's right.
Mr. Speaker, right now it takes about 6 months for police agencies to connect a phone number to an IP address or to a person, to a criminal, Mr. Speaker. But these Conservatives are against supporting our lawful access measures, which would give law enforcement these exact tools. Which side are they on, Mr. Speaker? I hope they vote with us when we put this bill to Parliament.
The Honourable Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
York Region Police recently arrested a man accused of extorting a Vaughan resident for 7 years through threats and violence. Extortion is not a talking point. It's impacting real Canadians. Now Liberals are spreading falsehoods. Let's look at bail reform. The Liberals tabled bail changes October 23rd. We agreed to send the bill to committee on November 18th, and until yesterday, they sidelined public safety to attack freedom of expression. So, will the Liberal government stop their obstruction and work with Conservatives to restore mandatory minimums for extortion and repeal catch and release laws Bill C5 and C75?
Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, we are talking about catching these criminals. In order to catch these criminals, the police need the tools to do so. They need to be able to connect IP addresses and phone numbers to the criminals, which the Conservatives are obstructing and stopping from passing in this House. We brought lawful access measures, Mr. Speaker, to this Parliament in June, yet they've been obstructing those measures all along. Whose side are they on? Will they help our law enforcement and police officers with catching these criminals, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Federal Court of Appeal has once again affirmed that this Liberal government broke the most supreme law in this country, the Constitution, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, when it wrongly used the Emergencies Act, and also that it violated the Charter rights of Canadians by freezing the bank accounts of political protesters and limiting the legal right to protest. If this truly is a new government, will they say to Canadians right now that they will accept this ruling, uphold the civil liberties of Canadians, and not appeal this to the Supreme Court?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Andrew Lawton rocks.
Mr. Speaker, as a proud resident of the National Capital Region, I can only but lament this member's repeated, and I will give him this, he's been consistent on this, his repeated endorsement of the occupation of this downtown, of the disturbance and unbelievable annoyance that this created for residents of downtown Ottawa, and of the fact that it was an unlawful demonstration, Mr. Speaker, that ultimately was ended by the good graces and very Canadian model of cooperative law enforcement, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Peterborough.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, the Prime Minister announced new measures to put money back in the pockets of Canadians, including the Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit, which I know will mean a great deal to my constituents in Peterborough and Canadians across the country. It also included new measures to improve our domestic production and enhance food security in Canada. As a farmer, I can't stress enough just how important this is. Now more than ever, Canadians want food made and produced right here in Canada. Can the Minister of Agriculture please explain what Monday's announcement will mean for our producers and for security in Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate my honourable colleague's question. She gets it as a farmer, Mr. Speaker. Canadians want access to Canadian-grown food, and our world-class farmers, producers and ranchers are ready to deliver. On Monday, our new government announced immediate expensum for greenhouse buildings. This will allow producers to fully write off greenhouses that become available for use before 2030. We are developing a national food security strategy, investing $20 million into a local food infrastructure fund, and much more. Simply put, Mr. Speaker, we're improving affordability for more than 12 million Canadians and building a more domestic, resilient food system here at home. I hope the Conservatives can agree.
The Honourable Member for Cowichan and Malahat Langford.
Mr. Speaker, forestry families on Vancouver Island are struggling. The Crofton Mill closed, the Atlee Mill closed, Chemainus Mill curtailed to the end of 2026. Hundreds and hundreds of jobs are lost, but more importantly, already struggling families are now facing dire consequences. This government's handouts and subsidies are not helping those affected and will not save this critical and renewable resource industry. When will the Prime Minister deliver on his promised softwood lumber trade deal?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
The closure of a mill is a difficult news, whether it's on Vancouver Island or all across the country. It's a difficult news for workers, their family, and the community. The federal government has come forward with support for the sector. We urge the provincial government to work with us as partner to protect these jobs.
Excuse me. I've been putting up with a lot of loud noise coming from my left, but I had to call it out now because I'm having trouble hearing the honourable member. So the honourable member from the top, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We really, it's a difficult news, the closure of any mills, whether it's on Vancouver Island or anywhere in the country. And we've come forward with a lot of support from a financial perspective. We work with the provincial government as partner to protect these. And they may have missed the news that we announced a forest sector transformation task force by the industry. They've already met, and they're formulating recommendation for the government for the future. We will continue to examine every option available. I urge the member to work with us on those.
The honourable member for Saanich, Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And my question is to the Honourable President of the Treasury Board. With massive cuts being made to our civil service, how can the government justify threats to public health and safety as outlined today by the Public Service Alliance of Canada? Specifically in my community, we're very concerned as across a number of departments, believe it or not, workers involved in marine emergency response to oil spills have all been laid off. How does the government justify this?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Le President, I thank my honourable colleague for her question. Canada's new government is taking a responsible approach to renewing the public service, focused on efficiency, sustainability, and respect for those who serve Canadians. New incentives are being introduced to support workforce renewals and to manage adjustments primarily through voluntary measures. Budget 2025 also proposes a measured reduction in up to 1,000 executive positions over the next 2 years to ensure leadership structure remain aligned with operational needs. Thank you.
I wish to draw the attention of members to the presence.
All right, gang, we're going to stick a fork in that. We're done. I can't believe Steve McKinnon just said that they invoked the Emergency Act because it was an annoyance. That was it. An annoyance. They were running people over with horses and freezing bank accounts, guys. They were using violence against Canadian citizens that were protesting. And they are saying their defense of using the Emergencies Act. Why don't we have an Annoyance Act? And then see how much money Steve McKinnon has left in that greaseball's bank account. He's a very frustrating one. Like, we'll put up the poll. Patty Haidu still beat him. Like, by 1%, whatever. Anyhow, gang, Aaron, Kennedy, and Looney, thank you all so much for watching. We're back tomorrow, same time, same place, same idea. Great pre-show. Cross right over to question period and see what kind of nonsense we're going to find on there. My, oh my. They just keep gaslighting. And the longer it goes, the more gaslighting they're going to have to do, because it's not like they're going to just turn it around and start being honest and frank and say that we've screwed up your country on purpose over the last 15 years and now we're hooked on the power. Anyhow, gang, Aaron, Canadian Looney, like, share, subscribe. Get notified for the live shows. We put out other videos. That's it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, watching here. We'll catch you tomorrow, gang. Thanks a lot again. Ciao for now. Aaron, Canadian Looney. Get your Canadian federal politics right here. Oh, Romper Room. We always do Romper Room.
You should do exercises. That's important to our good health. And friends, tomorrow we are going to be visiting with a fisherman who will tell us about his very enjoyable hobby. Now, I would like to see you all through our magic mirror. Romper bumper, stomper boo, tell me do. Magic mirror, please tell me today, did all of my friends have fun at play? I see all of my friends in Alberta. It's nice to see you. And I see Dan and Vivian. I see Marlon and Mona. I see Catherine and Harley. I see Anne and Elizabeth and Jane. I see Bert and Nicole, and I see you too. I hope to see you tomorrow, right here in Romper Room.
Bing bong knock knock, hey daddy do. Bing bong tick tock, bebop boom.
Kick off your weekend with exciting CFL action when the Edmonton Eskimos tackle the BC Lions in Vancouver. Tomorrow night at 10:30 on CFTO TV.